Have you ever heard rap music?
Does Sir Mix a lot like booty?
Listen to this. Actual rap lyrics. Life ain't nothing but gritches and money. Only they don't say gritches. They say a certain word that rhymes with it that starts with a B.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and here on the channel, we've been kind of talking about DC Comics. They're going to kind of change the way that they feel about continuity, the way they kind of implement it, where there's going to be more like pocket universes and things like that. I think Perch has also talked about this as well, but we're starting to get some more details, and right now it's being called the DC Comics Omniverse, and we're expecting it to be kind of rolling out as soon as Future State is over at the end of February, so March, April timeframe. And here with me to talk about this is an independent comic writer, independent comic editor, Joe Corallo. We're going to talk a little bit about DC Omniverse, kind of what it means and all that kind of stuff. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right. How are you, Wes?
I am doing excellent. Glad to be talking comic books.
Yes.
So there's a lot of other things people are talking about right now, but I want to talk about nerd stuff, more specifically comic books. Now, I think it's no secret that Marvel and DC have had an issue with continuity for quite a while now. They don't necessarily abide by it. Just recently you had Iron Man 2020 going on where, he's an AI, but in Empire, he's regular Iron Man, but in Avengers, he was back in time. Lots of weird stuff going on. Same thing kind of goes on with DC. And Dan DiDio, not that long ago, before he was fired, it was announced that he was going to clean up the timeline with something called Generation 5. There's going to be a series of like one-shots, and they were going to fix all the continuity issues with DC Comics and kind of make it like a linear story on what is real and what's not. Now, we are getting part of 5G, and that is Future State. And some people might think that indicates that DC is going to use that to clean up their continuity. That is not the case. I think we made that abundantly clear. Future State is basically taking the material that they had with some elements that they are definitely going to explore. They're kind of leading to it right now. But it's kind of a holding pattern until we get to March. And what we're learning now is they're not really going to adhere to continuity like we've seen in the past. It's going to be more fast and loose with continuity. Everything happened. Does any of it matter now, Joe? Are you surprised that DC is going to this length about their continuity and making it much more loose?
I'm not surprised because I feel like DC for a long time has really been pushing and stressing a lot of their more Elseworld out of continuity stuff. Like their big sellers are things, like still to this day, Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns.
Three Jokers, Doomsday Clock.
Absolutely. Deceased is a huge one. I mean, Injustice, White Knight. And further back, I mean, when you look at Superman and like All-Star Superman, Superman for All Seasons, Red Sun, like a lot of their like evergreen stuff that still sell well in trades are their Elseworlds.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely some of it obviously has been incorporated technically into continuity, but it's definitely inspired the changes in characters. Technically, I believe Dark Knight Returns really isn't in continuity. I think they did kind of shoehorn the Killing Joke in there, but like all those stories have really had the biggest effects on Batman going forward. Yeah. Me personally, I like continuity. I'm a big fan of it. I feel like it pays off the longtime reader. I'm a huge Valiant fan. I remember, I think I've told you that I was a huge fan of the Rise story. Well, there's a part, if you read all of Valiant, where you get to learn specifically where the sword that he takes back up to New Japan after he falls and goes and beats Father with, like you find out that that's comes from a venerable character in the Valiant Comics universe. You kind of see how it all happens, and I think those kind of payoffs are really cool if you're a longtime reader or that you've been kind of sticking with something. So I am going to be sad to see that kind of thing. Like, do you like that as a comic book reader when the connective tissue, or maybe a better example might be recently Al Ewing really went back and was borrowing a lot of ideas from Peter David's Incredible Hulk run for his Immortal Hulk. Like I kind of like it when they do that.
I love that stuff. I like the continuity when it really pays off. Another example for me is I'm a big classic Doctor Who fan. And, that's another thing where everything sort of stayed in continuity, and you would see things like the Cybermen would, appear fighting Tom Baker in Revenge of the Cybermen. And then we don't get the Cybermen for another 7 years until they come back in Earthshock with, Peter Davison as the Doctor. So, like, I love that kind of stuff. I love, when you see these characters come back after a long hiatus. And the problem that DC, I think, was having at that point was just you were resetting sooner and sooner and sooner. It was like DC.
The crisis events were happening more frequently, and the resets and the reboots were happening more frequently.
Yeah, basically, DC became an old cell phone that you can only go back to factory reset so many times before you need to just buy a new phone. And
that's a good analogy. It seems like I remember I was listening to an interview from Dan DiDio. He goes, "Yeah, once things are going really good, that's when you got to really go off the rails, and then you have to reset everything." Kind of obviously they did that multiple times under his reign. Yeah, him being out. Now, I don't think that they're going to kind of go off the rails. There's also a rumor out there that they're going to do like a DC Universe Rebirth style kind of like book to launch the new universe that's more loosely connected. I don't think that's going to happen. Like DC Rebirth, with what Jeff Johns did, really set up the status quo of the new universe, what characters we were getting, like kind of establishing them, and then moving forward with some real big plot elements. Obviously, they were paid off in Doomsday Clock. They were paid off in Batman 3 Jokers. So they kind of end up being out of continuity. Yeah. It was setting up a lot of things that everyone was going to be working towards. I don't think it's going to be like that. It seems to me like it's going to be more like Marvel Comics Incoming from last year, where it was introducing you to some of the story elements that they're going to be doing, and that was it.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. And some praise for DiDio, because I feel that he gets raked over the coals a lot, especially for like the New 52. But I will say that the New 52 brought me back to DC at a time where I was basically just reading stuff like The Walking Dead and Invincible. At that time, but the relaunch, there were so many factors in it that brought a lot of people back into DC. It worked sales-wise at the time, so I understand why that kind of reset seemed to be, a good idea. Long term, it didn't work out, but it's interesting seeing what they've done since then, what they've been trying to do to fix it. I think going in a different direction without Dan is probably the best way to go. It's not going to be like something Dan would do. And yeah, I think that lends itself to what you're saying about it's not going to be like, oh, there's going to be this sort of book to relaunch it again. And,
What's interesting, I've always for some reason, DC has always been like self-conscious of their own continuity. They always feel like it's gotten so out of hand, we have to reset everything. But it always felt like every time they tried to reset it, they just made it more confusing. Like when they did the New 52 reset, like Batman has only been in existence for 5 years, but he's supposed to have gone through 3 or 4 or Robins. It's like you're just making it worse. Just accept your continuity for what it is and embrace it, but it never felt like they could do that.
Yeah, the New 52. Any time any company has done any sort of reboot, it's always to fix problems by creating new problems, and it's
like the butterfly effect.
Yeah, it made Batman make less sense somehow. How did he go from having, Dick Grayson establishing himself as Nightwing in 5 years and also having these other Robins, just all that kind of stuff. It made Superman not make a lot of sense. you know, and then with Rebirth, it's like they tried to fix some of that stuff, and some of it was really successful, and some of it wasn't. But that's any time you relaunch a line. Some books are going to be exciting, and some aren't.
Well, yeah, because everything's going to be kind of new. It's new creative teams. It's new directions for the characters. Some people are going to embrace it. You know, you can do things that are exciting and, you know, outside the box, and people accept it. Sometimes they absolutely reject it. It's just, you just never know what creator is going to take to the character right.
Absolutely. And, you know, and the New 52, like, we're still dealing with sort of the creative field that we got from that. Like, it really launched Scott Snyder, who's still a huge player and one of the biggest writers of the 2010s. It really launched Jeff Lemire and made him a huge player. And we're still, like, that's still the world we live in comics now. Scott and Jeff are two of the biggest players writer-wise. So yeah, it's interesting seeing sort of the direction it's been going, but it's probably their best bet to give creators some more control and sort of let them tell good stories and back away from being as strict on the continuity, see where that kind of goes, and then work from there.
Well, I think that they're going to get a lot of advantages. Now, I do think this is going to turn a lot of DC readers off. A lot of people that, you know, maybe have complete Batman runs, Superman runs, and stuff like this. It's going to make them mad. I remember when Disney decided that all the Star Wars Extended Universe stuff wasn't canon anymore. People are still mad about that. That's going to happen, but there are some advantages into it where you can kind of play with different versions of the character. Just so somebody's died, you don't have to magically bring them back via a Lazarus pit or something like that. You can kind of go and talk about the characters. Plus, you can start to realign some of the characters with what Warner Brothers wants to do, whether it be on HBO Max, whether it be what they're doing with their CW Arrowverse, or what they're trying to do with the DCEU. Obviously, we have a new Batman. We've got some newer versions of the characters, like the Wonder Woman that we see on the movies doesn't exactly line up with the Wonder Woman that we're seeing in comic books. I think it'll allow them the flexibility to kind of line some of that stuff up as well. Also, you know, recently we do know that because of the Warner Media layoffs, a lot of the editorial staff at DC Comics were the ones that were let go. So they actually don't have a big staff because a lot of the creators are contractors. So that we know that they lost some editorial. Do you think that had a part to do in it, or do you think it's mostly just creative direction? But, you know, it feels like losing that much editorial services, like continuity was going to be hard to keep anyway.
I mean, that is possible. You know, Marvel sort of works with a smaller editorial staff than DC, and you know they've been pretty on top of continuity. So I think it's possible to do that, but I think when you're trying to figure out what to do to, you know, attract new readers, to get on top, that one of the first things that comes to mind is let's just pull back on, you know, the stricter rules and see what comes out on top. Because DC can always come back later and be like, oh yeah, this new Batman that took off, like we'll figure out a way to bring it into main continuity. And yeah, that is continuity. Like they can always go back and figure out a way to make something part of the longer continuity. This could be a way to go back and, you know, pick different times from like Batman's career to focus on, and or go in a completely new direction. This could be great for that. The downside is this also opens the door to Warner potentially being like, well, Batman sells books, so we're just going to, you know, shoehorn Batmans into these different books, and it doesn't matter because it's not in continuity. We'll just say it's another world. So, like, now Wonder Woman can, you know, be paired up.
You can't write that Superman story without including a Batman part of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this Superman needs more Joker. You know, like that kind of stuff. So that it does open the door to that. We won't know for a while if that ends up being how this goes. I hope it's not. I hope it's focusing on creators and telling whatever stories they want to tell that are, you know, good and you know, further the IP. But that is a danger we could find ourselves in.
I have a feeling this is going to give creators more freedom, but it's going to be more freedom to concentrate on the characters and stories that Warner Brothers thinks might translate well to whether it be their streaming service. They actually have a good animated film division as well. Yeah, the movies and stuff like that. So I think we're going to see a lot of Batman. A lot of Batman.
We're going to see a lot of Batman. I feel like, yeah, we're going to end up in that like middle ground where there's going to be more creative control within the creators outside editorial, which is going to be great. But we're going to get more of the characters that sell. We're going to get more Batman and things. Hopefully it's not over the top, but
like Jeff Lemire said, in order for him to write that question book that he got to do with, I think it was Dennis Cowan. Yeah, he had to do the Joker book on Joker Smile, Killer Smile. He had to do that for Black Label to get to do the question book.
Yeah. You know, so we'll see that. We'll probably end up seeing, you know, maybe we'll get Joker-fied gods and Wonder Woman. You know, maybe, you know, we'll see what ends up happening. Maybe, you know, Bat villains will show up in different places, and you know, it's going to be interesting seeing where it goes, seeing if it dilutes things too much or if they show a level of restraint.
Me personally, I think it's probably the smart choice. I don't think they've been managing their continuity that well anyway. Gives them a little bit more creative freedom, you know, flexibility to work with things. You don't have to, you know, all be in you're not going to get the fan complaints that, hey, none of this makes sense. You know, obviously you can be able to do your own thing. You know, as you know, from your perspective, you have a good gut feeling or do you have a bad gut feeling about this DC Omniverse that's coming up?
I'm cautiously optimistic because honestly, the other way to go about it would be to just keep doing what you're doing until you do another crisis and reset everything anyway. And so things already kind of fell into the that's cool, but it doesn't necessarily matter category. So I'm open to this. I think there's a lot more potential here than and it prevents some of the sort of goofiness we see happen a lot in comics and with Marvel or DC, where, you know, like storylines get, you know, pushed off the rails because they're like, oh, well, we need this character in this other thing. And I know we promised you this character, but now you can't use it. Or, oh, you can't do, you know, like now you have to have your book fit into this event.
Tie into this event.
Yeah. So I think this is a way where Marvel feels like they're tying more and more into events again, where like it felt like, you know, the Dawn of X titles were going to not have to deal with some of the events, but now they've been getting dragged into events more and more. What we're seeing that shift, so I think we're seeing DC shift further away from that to be like, no, these books are going to do their own thing, and when we do an event book, we might have tie-in one-shots and things for the event, but we're not tying the main book in. You know, like,
they're doing a lot of anthologies and things like that.
Yeah, which I think is a better approach. Instead of derailing, you know, what James is doing on Batman, you have a Batman-related death metal tie-in that has nothing to do with that run.
I agree. I don't want to freak the viewers out too much. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's no continuity. We've seen, you know, some of the information that for Batman after Future State. And guess what? We're going to start meeting the Magistrate and some of the other characters that are in Future State. So they're moving kind of towards something that we already know. We know that the stuff that was happening in Superman right now was leading towards the bottled city of Metropolis and Jonathan Kent, and you know the Wildstorm universe kind of coming, or the Authority kind of coming in and and Superman kind of siding with them. I imagine they're going to keep going along with that. So they are going to keep working on some of those storylines that and some of the ideas that that are being introduced in Future State. They're not abandoning everything, but I just, not everything has to be connected anymore.
Absolutely. And this could also be, this is me being overly optimistic. I'm not sure this is going to happen, but this is an opportunity where maybe DC looks at things and goes, you know what? We keep hearing all these people talk about how they preferred Jonathan Kent when he was younger. Maybe we can do a book where he's younger again without throwing everything off because it's kind of its own.
There has to be a prequel because there's a specific date when he was aged up, and that's why the Adventures of the Super Sons has to be before. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, so like it opens the door to something like let's see, and then if the sales are there, then we might see more of that. This is an opportunity to have Barbara be Oracle again, and see like all these people have been clamoring for Barbara to be Oracle again. Maybe we can test the waters here, and if the people actually show up and buy the book, if we do that, then maybe we're onto something like this. I feel this opens the door to DC to try some of these things out and see what the fan reactions might be. And if they're just, loud people on social media and fans at cons, or if this actually translates to sales, and if it translates to sales, maybe we'll actually see some of these changes that fans have been talking about wanting for a while.
Absolutely. So I do want to say thank you very much for joining me here today, Joe, to talk about the DC Comics Omniverse. Perch and I, like I said, we've been kind of talking about DC was going to change their view and kind of how they're implementing continuity. It was going to become more pocket universes, and maybe not everything needs to be connected. I think there's definitely some positives. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of upset fans, and I completely understand because I do like continuity. I like it when you follow a character and things get paid off, and so it could be good, but I understand why people are going to be upset. I definitely want to hear from the viewers. What do you think about this? Let us know in the comment section. Joe and I will definitely be reading those, and we'll get back to you. And I don't know, you got anything else you need to say before we wrap this up, Joe?
Other than keep your eye out on the news for these books and see what they're doing. It could be really interesting. So we'll see. I'm ready to see what they're going to do, and I am staying optimistic about it for now.
Definitely keep your eye out for the new creative teams that are going to be coming out in March. That is going to give us a very good idea what the direction of DC Comics is. I've been told that we should be seeing those around like the beginning to mid-December timeframe. When that happens, we'll definitely be covering it right here on the channel because that's kind of what we've been waiting for. We know Endless Winter's coming. We know Future State, but really the direction of DC Comics is going to be known once we find out the March information. That basically will wrap us up. Thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.